So this is the Lawrence County Law Enforcement Hour, second show. How you been, Maddie?
Good. How have you been?
I've been busy.
Feel like it's been a while.
I know. Here we are pre-recording again.
I know. It's your fault this time, though.
We're doing live next week, right?
Yes.
Unless I have to put this out there. There may be another issue with next week, but I've got a really good excuse. But I can't tell you about it until I'm back in town. It's out of town, but I'll explain later. It's some of that top secret stuff.
I got you.
Secret squirrel stuff.
Oh man.
You got you two nice guests in here today.
I do. We'll get the introductions out of the way. I even have.
Y'all have folders except for Jackie, I think. Oh, Jackie does have a folder.
Everybody knows Jackie. He don't.
I knew it mess it up. I have something to read. So.
He only goes by one name. It's kind of like Madonna.
I know.
So I have my number 3. My number 3 is Captain Jackie Hurd. And when I say number 3 means in the command staff at the sheriff's office. It's me, then Bart Turin, and then Captain Hurd. Now, when I say he's number 3 in the chain of command, but he has specific duties and or responsibilities. I'm going to read you a little bit about Captain. I'm going to read you a little bit about Captain Hurd and why he's number 3. Well, let me back up. He's not number 3 solely because of his training and experience and years of service. He's number 3 because, and I'm going to brag on him, and I might even make him cry. I'm pretty sure I'm going to make him tear up.
I'm tender-hearted, so.
He's number 3 because he's, number 1, he's a hard worker. Number 2, he's very trustworthy. And number 3, he's very low maintenance. Low maintenance is key at the sheriff's office. And as an employer, you want low maintenance employees. Now, you don't work for me, Maddie, but you're probably a mid-level.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
Not high maintenance, but maybe mid-level.
Oh, thanks.
What I will do is I'll qualify this for sheriff is that he is low maintenance to the sheriff, but he is very high maintenance for number 4.
Yes, I got you. You're very special, Jackie.
Well,
and that's not me being sarcastic.
Let's see. Yeah, so his responsibilities at the sheriff's office is that he's over our patrol division, and our patrol division makes up of 20 plus commissioned deputies, probably. That's probably a pretty accurate number, including all the administrative personnel. He's also over our courthouse security division, and that's 4 commissioned deputies upstairs. So he's got a lot on his plate. He's held this position since I took office in 2018.
September of 18.
Yeah. We was just at another thing, luncheon, something, I don't guess I should say.
We were at another function.
We were at another function, thank you, O'Rourke. And they gave me a little something to just say thank you from the community, and I made it clear that it's not me, it's the people under me, because I learned real quick that if you don't have good people under you, then you're never going to be successful, especially at this job. But anyway, when did you start at the sheriff's office?
2013.
2013. So you're at 10 years. You're at your 10-year mark this year, right?
Yes, sir.
What are you going to do for your 10-year anniversary?
Probably put in my 15-year notice.
Well, I'll take that. I'll take a 15-year notice. Yeah, seriously, what month did you hire in? October?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we need to do something. We need to do something for him in October.
I like cupcakes.
You didn't eat that strawberry cake. I ate it for you.
Passed around the table 4 times before it made it to me. So.
But in all jokes aside, Captain is one of the spokes in the wheel that turns at the sheriff's office. He makes my job a lot easier. I'll say that. And I couldn't be where I'm at without him and the rest of the guys. The other guy sitting over here to my right, Patrick O'Rourke, lieutenant. He's our training lieutenant. And number 4 in the chain of command. And he doesn't have people under him, sort of say, even though he's number 4 in the chain of command, but he's our training lieutenant. And that's a huge responsibility because he oversees all the training at the sheriff's office. And we have 90 something employees right now. So he's got a lot on his plate. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that he does. And the topic of the discussion today is really training and how it relates to our job and what sets this job aside from a normal civilian job. Because we're mandated training, and if we don't complete that training every year, then we lose our certification, and if we lose our certification, we can't do anything in law enforcement. So we're going to talk about some of the mandated training, and we're also going to talk about some of the new mandated training that's come down the pike from post since the whole social injustice movement that's hit law enforcement over the past few years. Some people argue it started in Ferguson, Missouri, and then it was just maybe it died down a little bit, and then with the George Floyd incident, it's escalated again, and most states have implemented new training. And if we don't do it, then we lose our commission. We lose our commission again, we can't work. But anyway, I'll tell you a little bit about Patrick. I met Patrick probably in 2017.
16, I think it was.
16 or 17, when I was chief of police in Etheridge. You started working up there as a reserve, and just fell right in with the rest of us guys up there. Now you was how long was you in the military, Patrick?
I was in the Navy for 12 years.
12 years. He's a very smart individual, ain't he, Jackie?
A little smart for my cup of tea, but yeah,
Are we talking about education-wise or being a smart aleck?
both.
Yeah, both. Right. Yep. Bachelor's degree in business. I didn't know that. See, I learned something new today. I didn't know you had a degree in business.
I do.
Why haven't I been coming to you for financial advice?
I have no idea.
Maddie, pencil him in my schedule
So,
for 2 weeks.
Bachelor's degree in business and a minor in psychology.
Why you always
That's
playing those
even
mind
better.
games with us?
Psychology. I should have a degree in psychology.
We all need a degree in psychology,
I'm pretty sure I could get one.
just off of experience.
Just based off of years of experience. So you had several qualifications in the military. I see you as a certified firearms instructor, and you was on a special response team. Now, what did that consist of? Did y'all do any boarding exercises, or how to keep other ships or vessels or boats from boarding your?
Yeah, less about boarding and more about rappelling, as we would say in the Navy. So it's when you're out at sea, that special response team was responsible, along with a Marine detachment, for the security of that ship. And that include what we would call rappelling. So if somebody were to try to take our ship, pirates as an example, then our jobs would have been to respond and to repel that attack.
I got you.
So, and then on land, same principle, but it was the base in particular. So it was actually really fun. You were in the military, so you had duty sections. My specialty in the Navy itself was in aviation maintenance. So I worked on all the Navy's aircraft instruments and inertial navigation systems. But you know that military, they had duty sections. And so,
Well, I watched some of the videos. I love watching those videos on YouTube of the pirates and the little boats trying to take over or take control of a private boat, and they hire these prior military, ex-military guys, and they just, you know, they give them a command, maybe two, and then they light them up with, and that'd be a pretty good job.
yeah.
I had an opportunity. I had a job proposal that it never materialized, and it was probably in it had to have been around 2015, 16. And a guy that I was friends with, that I worked for a while, and he was a security contractor. He was in Iraq twice, maybe Afghanistan the first time. He went in 04, and then he went again. I went in 11. He went in 8 or 9, and he came back. And anyway, he got plugged in with a guy that had done some of that anti-pirate security for some of these private companies. I don't know if they was oil rigs or what, but anyway.
Oil rigs, and then a lot of ships that were being attacked off of the straits off of Somalia.
Yeah, container ships.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they knew they could get the bang for their buck. Anyway, I had it sounded good for a little while, and then it just, I don't know if it fell through or they filled all the positions that they had open or what. Anyway, I didn't get to go, but I wanted to. So you started right after I took office, right, at the sheriff's office?
About a year. Yeah, right at a year, as a matter of fact. Yeah, yeah. It was September. It was September of 19.
And you was commissioned
in 20.
20, right? So, but you got a lot of experience leading up to that. Both of you guys are probably got a lot more experience in what you do than what maybe a paper shows. And that's only a small reason why y'all are in the positions that y'all are in. So the other things, that being a low maintenance employee and being a good communicator, and I go on and on and on. I could go on and on about why y'all are where y'all at. But anyway, we want to do stats. We want to talk about stats first, or do we want to get right into? Let's save the stats for later. Let's talk.
Well, we've already went over the stats. And
That was
y'all
last month. I'm doing weekly stats now.
Oh, okay.
I pulled all the stats from last week. So now on Thursdays we can go over. It's the same report. It's the same monthly report, but it's just broke down by the week.
Gotcha.
And it's been a busy week. This past weekend, how many domestic calls did we have? It seemed like we had 10 of them.
Several.
Patrick, let's talk about, I tell you what let's do. Let's talk about the mandated training. Let's talk about what's mandated. And I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that, so when we go through the academy, and Post tells us that we can not employ anybody over 6 months, right? Is it 6 months? And then we either have to ask for a waiver or send them to the academy.
6 months, and they have to at least be enrolled in the academy and accepted into the academy.
Okay.
So, in other words, if it's 7 months, as long as they have been accepted and they're enrolled in the next scheduled class, then you're fine. If for some reason they can't make that, or it's going to be beyond that before we can get them into a class, then yes, you have to request a waiver and go in front of the Post Commission. And if anybody doesn't know what Post stands for, it's Police Officer and Training Standards.
Standards and training. Now, didn't they give us a little wiggle room during COVID and after COVID? Because Post shut down. Well, Post didn't shut down. Toledo, Tennessee Law Enforcement Training Academy, shut down for a year, maybe a year and a half. I don't remember. Do you remember, Captain, how long they were shut down for? That they weren't accepted any new applicants to go through the basic training?
No, sir, I don't.
So it officially shut down only for about 3 months. After that, it was very limited capacity. And of course, they were trying to maintain and go with the state and federal mandates of keeping people at a certain distance while in classrooms or in training and stuff like that. So I do know that they had some of those limitations. That was pretty taxing on these guys that were working up there.
So when we get a new hire started at the sheriff's office, we've got 6 months from the time he starts until the time he goes to basic, unless we get a waiver. It used to be a year, because when I hired on in the 90s, you had 12 months. Or, and I saw this, I don't think we ever did it at Lawrence County, but other departments, if you had somebody that wasn't either physically ready to go to the academy or didn't want to go, or they couldn't put them in for whatever reason, they'd lay them off for a month, then hire them right back for a week or something, and they would look like another new hire, so they'd get another year. You know, the Post, I think, caught on to that. No, that's not going to fly. So anyway, we've got 6 months to get a new hire through the academy, and the academy now is what, 12 weeks?
12 weeks, 488 hours.
488 hours that they go through basic police school. Once they complete that, and they're a full-time employee and they're commissioned, they've got a certification. Once you get that certification, then you got the heavy lifting over. You're hireable pretty much by any agency if you've already got that certification under your belt. I know when we look at new hires, that's one of the first things we look at is, are you certified? Have you ever been certified? If you were certified, how long's it been since you did your in-service? And so, and it may not be the same now, but I was out 7 years. I was between the 5 and 10 year mark. So all I had to go was to the 3-week refresher, and then I got my certification back. Is it still 5 and 10, or is it 3 and 7? Because I've heard different.
If it's 3 to 5 years, I just read this. If it's 3 to 5 years, they have to go through the 3-week transition school, what they call the transition school refresher. If it's over 5 years, then they'll have to go back through the 12-week academy.
Wow, so they've cut it in half.
Yeah. Now, and that's assuming you haven't kept up your certification.
Right,
So,
and they go by the last year you completed your in-service.
yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what in-service is 40 hours of mandated training that we have to complete. Well, I shouldn't say mandated. It's 40 hours of training we have to complete. A percentage of that 40 hours is mandated by the state, right?
Correct.
What is mandated out of that 40 hours? What's mandated as far as training you have to have?
So, here are the ones that are mandated pretty much every year, and it's been like this for quite a while. But firearms, first and foremost, we have to have 8 hours of firearms training. Child sex abuse and child abuse, mental health, and then this year they've included DUI refresher.
I didn't know that. Do you know that, Captain?
Until here recently, which is good because DUIs or something, if you don't stay on top of it,
It's a use or lose it skill because there are specific tasks that you have to complete.
Do you think the reason why they're adding this refresher is because we're seeing less people impaired by alcohol and more people impaired by either pills or Schedule II drugs or some of this real potent marijuana? I mean, I'm just speculating, but I could see that. I could see that as a reason why.
It's more common to come across someone who's under the influence of a narcotic now versus alcohol.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure they react different with different field sobriety tests too, right?
Yeah. And then even beyond that, there are things that people do that are quote unquote legal, but are still illegal because you're operating a automobile or a vehicle under the influence. So as an example, Delta 8. A lot of people go to these stores, buy Delta 8 products, whether it's the vapes or whether it is the edibles, gummies, or whatever the case is, but it still gives them a euphoric or a high feeling. Well, the product itself is legal, but using it and getting behind a vehicle still isn't. So a lot of people, when they think of DUI, it's, well, that person's been drinking or been doing drugs. DUI does not specify that it is a illegal substance. What it does is it says anything that impairs your ability to operate that vehicle on a roadway in a safe manner. So that's what people have to feel, and you know that can be as simple as Benadryl. Some people can take a couple of Benadryls and all of a sudden they're nodding off, they're falling asleep, and you know now they're weaving in and out all over the.
Or some of them pills you was talking about the other day, Manny, that you said you take.
Benadryl. I'm not going anywhere if I take Benadryl, I assure you that.
You know, and we even covered this in firearms training. NyQuil is another one. So those are things that, while they are legal substances that you can just get over the counter, if they impair your ability to operate a vehicle, then you are technically driving under the influence.
Yeah. So, I would speculate that's why we're seeing that mandated now in our 40 hours of in-service, just because it's more frequent than
So additionally,
alcohol impaired.
yeah, and additionally this year we have to go through de-escalation and duty to intervene. De-escalation, basically skills to be able to diffuse a situation, an intense situation that you may be in.
We knew that was coming.
Yeah, and duty to intervene. People may have seen this in the news lately, but a police officer, a sheriff's deputy, trooper, we actually have a responsibility, both ethically and by law, to intervene if someone is either approaching on or certainly has gone over the line of use of force. Okay.
Well, yeah, you look at the George Floyd. Didn't they indict some of the officers that was just
Yeah, they all went down. If you were there, you went down.
that was standing there and they didn't do anything about it.
Yeah. And then what's his name? Shambo, whatever his name was. I think he got the worst penalty of all because he was the direct
Right.
officer. And then one of them, and this is where kind of duty to intervene was, and I don't recall his name. I believe he was a newer officer, but he was standing by. He watched and he saw what was going on, and they said that he had a duty to intervene. He had a responsibility to intervene and pull that officer off of him. He should have said something.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, all he'd had to done was walked over and said, "Hey, you probably need to ease up on him."
yeah.
But anyway, we wasn't there. I don't want to speculate.
Yeah.
Now, are we still required to do the 2 hours of community service or whatever? What's that called?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have community immersion or community service. So it's mandated hours.
We do that every day.
Yeah.
We do that every day.
Yeah, but any officer, any first responder, you know, basically interacts with the public on a daily basis.
I'm trying to think of a commissioned law enforcement position that doesn't do that every day while they're on duty. I mean, if you're a school resource deputy, you're doing it every day. If you're courthouse security, you're doing it every day. I mean, if you're patrol, criminal investigation, if you're a drug agent, I can't think of any position in this line of work where you're not already providing a community service.
Yep.
Are they? So when I first heard about that, I think was 1 or 2 years ago, and I can remember it wasn't specific, but some of the examples of it was working a ball game in the concession stand, or flagging traffic at a church function or something, have they loosened up on that, or is it, who decides what that is, and if what you do is fits the criteria for it?
It's really the department that defines that. Now, at first, when it first came out, was it last year, the year before, they gave examples and everybody took those examples as that's what you have to do. Post clarified it and said these are just examples, and it's really defined by the department. So, you know, a road deputy that comes across somebody that just needs their tire changed, you know, they stop, and we do that on a daily basis. They stop and they help that person out. Then, you know, that's in community involvement or community immersion. Whereas before, Post had given ideas of, you know, working a ball game, or, you know, working at the civic center, or volunteering and working in the cafeteria at the school, or whatever the case is. But ultimately, it's the department or the agency that really defines what is community involvement.
So out of that 40 hours that we have to do every year to keep our certification, how much of that 40 hours is mandated training? Have you tallied it all up? So you got 8 of firearms?
Yeah, it's about 20. So the last 5, the de-escalation, the duty intervene, officer wellness, public assembly, interaction, and community, that is 5 hours.
That's total 5 hours for all that?
Yeah, that piece itself is 5 hours. And then above that, then you've got, what is that, 8, 10, 12, 14, you have 16, and those are the ones that have been mandated for quite a while.
So out of the 40, 21 hours is mandated.
Mm-hmm.
And so that leaves what, 19?
19.
My math whiz over here. She was spouting off numbers left and right last time, and then we stumped her on something. I can't remember what it was.
It was after we got it was like something in 2002. How many years ago was that? I only can guess in the 90 era, because that was the year
she
I was
does
born.
that. Yeah, she does that. So she make everybody in the room feel old. It's the only reason she does it.
You don't have to do it to make me feel old.
Oh, you're not that old, are you, Captain? How old are you?
39.
39. You got a few years on me. I ain't gonna ask you how old you are.
56. I'll be 57 here shortly.
So the 19 hours, as long as it's post-certified, doesn't matter what it is. We could do 19 hours of hostage negotiation,
Mm-hmm.
and as long as it's post-approved, then they give us that 19 hours pretty much.
Yeah, and so that's defined again by the agency. So what the training officer will do is specifically look at where can this particular agency, you know, improve in certain areas. So typically what we'll look at is what do we do on a day-to-day basis? When's the last time that we've trained in that, and then, you know, try to create training around that. So.
And the reason I'm asking about that 19 hours and what's mandated is because, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this mandated training isn't training that we need. We could argue a little bit that there's stuff out there that we need more than the mandated, but it's mandated. We don't have any say so in it. We have to do it, so we suck it up and do it. If they say, if Post calls down here next year and says we're adding another 4 hours of whatever, and you got to do it, then we got to do it. I mean, we don't have the luxury of saying, no, I think we're going to pass on that this year. But talking specifically about other training, advanced training, what I call specialized training, and I'm a big believer in specialized training, guys, and here's why. Because I didn't get any training at the Sheriff's Department back in the 90s. I got the basic police school, and when I got out of Toledo, they just threw me in a car and said, go out and work. And I was ignorant about a lot. And I rode with a couple of sergeants, and I don't want to say I didn't learn anything. Well, I will say the one sergeant that I rode out with, I didn't learn anything. I'll go on ahead and say it. I won't say who he was, but I didn't learn nothing. And if anything, all he did was he taught me some bad habits. But you fast forward from 90, I guess it was 96 when I went through the training academy. And from that period of time, when I started at the drug task force, and I think I started at the task force in 98 maybe, I went to work for an individual that was the total opposite. And he believed in training. He believed in specialized training. He believed that, and that's kind of where I got that saying from, you know, if you're not training, you're not effective, and if you're not effective, you're not making a difference. He sent me to more schools in the first year that I started there than I went to the whole time at the sheriff's office. And it was solid training that I learned from, and I applied it to my job, and it made me good. Because if I wouldn't have had that training with my job, my assignment at the task force was interdiction. And that's not something anybody can do. And he made sure that I got that training. I went through basic narcotics school. I went through a couple of K-9 schools. I went through tons of traffic stop schools. And the best one, and I can still remember, was put on by some guys in Georgia that was on an interdiction team. And they were so successful on I-85 in Georgia that they had drug couriers taking different routes, because the likelihood of them going up that interstate not getting caught was slim to none. So they were so effective that they rerouted the couriers going to Atlanta. Anyway, they came up and they gave a class. And man, we got out of that training class, we were on fire. We started applying everything that they taught us, and we were squared away. Now,
I think, and not to get too political, but you know, the environment that we live in right now, there's, you know, in certain areas, there's that movement of defunding the police, when it really should be, if they really want to affect change, it really should be the opposite. They should be saying we need to invest more money specifically in the area of training for police officers.
You said I've been preaching that ever since that whole defund the police BS
So
started.
it's really counterintuitive to what you want to accomplish. And if people would step back and say, okay, well, what do we want to accomplish with all this? And it's X, Y, Z. And then you develop the plan to say, okay, well, this is what we need to do to get there. It really comes down to more training and a higher budget than it does with trying to defund or cut back, or their new word, reallocate funds to.
Yeah, reallocate. So is Meridian still open? Are they still doing training?
We're back up and going now.
Yeah.
What's that called? The
Our CTA.
Regional Counter Drug Training
Drug
Academy.
Task or something like that.
And is it all still free? It's all still free training, right?
Yeah, and if it's actually at Meridian, the lodging and food is provided as well. Now
So
they
all
also
we're out
travel-
of pocket is
is
fuel
traveling
down
down.
there and back, and paying salary.
If it's at Meridian. Now they also travel around and do training, and the training fee itself is free, but you have to cover T&E or traveling expenses.
I got you. I haven't been to RCTA probably in 20 years, maybe, but I heard it's
one of my favorite places to go. You've got the chow hall there, you've got the training classroom, you've got the barracks, all within 200 yards of each other. So
Didn't they build a new barracks or dorm rooms for?
They did, because I know there for a while they was having to go into town and stay in a hotel versus the barracks that I haven't been over there since they've reopened up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't been in, like I said, 20 years, but man, I went to a K-9 school there. I went to a survival Spanish there. I went to a basic narcotics school. I think I was probably there 4 or 5 times over a couple, 3 years. They provided some great training. Jack Robichaud taught the K-9 class down there, and golly, I left that thing. I was so green of a K-9 handler when I went down there, and I learned so much from that man's class. I mean, it was great. And I'll tell you another good one, and I don't know if y'all have been, and that's the Reed interview and interrogation. If you've never been to that Reed interview and interrogation school, they have a basic and advanced. I was fortunate enough to go to both.
I heard they're really good.
Hands down the best training ever. What was that class? What, you went to a school last year or the year before, and you talked about what a great school that was, how you learned so much.
That was a legal and liability school.
That's it. Legal and liability. Yeah.
And actually, the guy that taught most of it testified in the George Floyd trial. He was a big, well-named guy, and he had some good information, stuff that we could have brought back to the department and used. That, you know, as far as training, if you don't stay on top of it, you don't realize a lot of times that things are changing, and you're still used to doing the same things you've always done. Well, that way may be wrong now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm big on training. If you get the latest of everything. I know everybody knocks these guys coming out of the academy saying, well, they're green, don't know anything. Well, they've been taught the latest of everything that's going on, so they may be able to come back and teach us something.
Mm-hmm. ROCIC is another big one too, right? Are they still sending emails on some training that they're offering? That's free too, right?
It is. It is. And even right now, the state of Tennessee is sponsoring some classes even for leadership. And those classes, a lot of the fees there, unless you're a large department or city, then those fees are waived as well. So
I think
that's by a grant.
I think you've got an email. I think you got one of our lieutenants signed up for that leadership class.
And then there's an advanced one in August.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, I think a lot of the people that are out there that are maybe have a false idea that we're not as trained up as we should be, which I don't know if we can ever be as trained up as we need to be. It's like Captain said, everything's changing all the time. I mean, there's either a Sixth Circuit opinion or a Supreme Court opinion that comes down the pike that affects everything that we do. One of the biggest ones that I saw when I was out, when I took my 7-year hiatus from law enforcement, one of there was a couple. There was the Hamilton County case, the Vanessa K.
Free.
That was a big one. That was one that I didn't know how that changed, and it put the liability on the agency chasing the bad guy. You know, that changed everything, because it used to be the bad guy had the liability on him because he's the one that chose to run. Now it's different. You know, when we're chasing a bad guy, if he chooses to run, the liability's on us because we're chasing him. It isn't because all he has to do is stop and pull over. It's because he chose to run. But
for us, it all comes down to due care. We still have a responsibility to, even though we need to chase somebody, we still have the responsibility to be safe in the method and the approach that we take to do that.
I agree. But shouldn't the bad guy have that too?
Yeah, and as long as, I can't speak for judges or lawyers, but for me, as long as we're doing everything we can to maintain our number one mission, and that is to protect the public, which goes back to due care in the way that we execute these pursuits. The bad guy should be liable.
I mean, we are expected, we're sworn to an oath to keep the peace. When you look at sheriff's duties in the TCA, keep the peace is right there with serving process, maintaining the jail, and providing security for the courthouse. And you keep the peace by enforcing the laws. And I understand, and I know me and you share the same outlook and feelings on this, but we're just making a point that when a reasonable person knows that when they see blue lights behind them or red lights to yield, any reasonable person that lives in this country knows that when they see emergency equipment behind them, they're to slow down and yield, or slow down and stop. And when you choose to do the exact opposite, and you speed up and you take flight, and we chase you, even though we're doing everything that we can do care, because the last thing we want to do is to cause a wreck, or not cause a wreck. I don't want to say cause a wreck. I'll say be involved in a wreck that takes an innocent life. I mean, I've said this 1,000 times, especially preaching to the younger guys. If you're chasing somebody for a traffic violation, think about if that vehicle runs into a woman, a mama, with a couple of kids leaving softball practice. Think about that. Is getting this guy on the shoulder and getting him under arrest, is it worth that if that happens? Think about it. Because if it is, then okay, stay with it. But if it isn't, then let it go. And that's what we have to do. I mean, it all comes down to making that decision to let it go. And we hate it. I hate it. Ain't nothing I hate worse than taking off after some guy and we're running and he's forcing cars in the ditch and not, almost hitting Amish buggies and you gotta turn them lights off.
It's a tough pill to swallow, but I mean, 3 weeks ago I chased a guy on my way home and he come through town 4 o'clock in the afternoon, probably 1/8 of a mile pursuit. I shut it down, so there's no way I'm chasing this guy out through the middle of town at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, well, I mean, you and I, a few months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, we responded to a SWAT call. And we had to come from the north all the way to the south. I think our rendezvous point was down the road. But even you said that we had blue lights and sirens going. Speed limit's 35. We probably weren't doing more than 45 through town just because of the traffic. And that's what we mean by do care. It's using common sense and thinking about, okay, what else is around me, and how can my actions affect others.
We might need to have a whole hour discussion on pursuits, traffic pursuits. We might, once we get this flat screen here plugged in, where we can just cut into this video here and display the screen. For example, I can bring a thumb drive in here and we can watch maybe some body camera footage or some dash cam footage, and we can break down some different, we need to have a whole hour segment on traffic pursuits.
Well, how many people we have in this county? 45-ish?
45,000.
So, since I know all 45,000 people are going to be listening to this, I want to just go ahead and make a public service announcement that when you see blue lights and you hear sirens, you as a person on the road and you passed your driver's test, you were supposed to get as far right as you safely can and either slow or stop. You don't stop in the middle of the lane and you don't pull into the turning lane. That's my public service announcement.
Or
can you make sure to tell them to turn their headlights on when it's raining too?
Or we're kind of hung up on traffic stops, and we're going about another 3 or 4 minutes, and we're going to talk about something else. But I don't know if it's taught in the academy the way that I conducted stops on the interstate. I know the Highway Patrol, and I don't know if this is a policy that they adopted a while back, but have y'all noticed that every time they turn their blue lights on, they've got their siren going too? I think it's probably maybe a policy now that they have. When they activate one, they activate both. I don't know. But whenever I was watching traffic on the interstate and a car come by committing a traffic violation that I wanted to stop, I would roll in behind them, and I might follow that vehicle for 2 miles until I knew where there was a safe location on the interstate, and I would activate my equipment right there, maybe 1/10 or 2/10 of a mile before that, and then hoping that they see that pull in, and then I'd safely get off the side of the road. So when a violator pulled into a parking lot or a driveway or something, I was always glad they did. So for the people out there listening and watching this, if there's a driveway or a pull off or a pull in or a parking lot or something as you're getting blue lighted, feel free to pull in there and get us all the way off the pavement.
Yeah. And regardless of don't even worry about officer safety. What is your safety? I mean, do you really want to be stopped where you're stopping? So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll pencil that in. We'll talk one day about stops and pursuits. I'll write that down.
Yeah.
I tell you another law change that I didn't know, and I'm not going to badmouth Post, and I'm not going to badmouth the instructors up there. I'm not going to badmouth the individual that designed that 3-week refresher course that I went to. But when I come back from that, I honestly expected that 3-week refresher course to be mostly case law updates and court opinions, changes in policies and stuff.
That's what I would have thought.
Again, I don't want to badmouth Post, but anyway, I found out after coming back from that 3-week refresher, I'd done a search incident to arrest. Now, back in my heyday, a search incident to arrest was a free search for the most part. If you arrested an individual out of the vehicle, whether it was in the front seat, back seat, rear seat, side seat, didn't matter. If you made an arrest for whatever reason, that gave you the ability to search the interior of that vehicle, everywhere but the trunk and the hood. You couldn't pop the hood and you couldn't pop the trunk, but the passenger and driver compartments in that vehicle was subject to search if you made an arrest out of that vehicle. Well, I didn't know that changed. And I made a stop and we arrested the passenger, we arrested the driver out of the vehicle and conducted a search and found drugs under the passenger side seat. And the driver said, it wasn't mine, I didn't put it there, it was under the passenger side seat. Guy wouldn't own up to it, so we arrested him for the drugs under the passenger side seat. Well, in my report, I wrote it up as it was a search incident to arrest, because we arrested the driver because she had warrants. I didn't find out until after my supervisor at the time read the report, and he come back and he says, you know that doesn't give you that search anymore. You have to be able to articulate now why you searched it, just not because you made an arrest out of it. For example, he said if you could say that the passenger was making some movements that suggested he was hiding something, he had a criminal history of drugs, he appeared that he was under the influence, he was acting very nervous, he was showing signs of anxiety, and if you could articulate why, then it's okay. You can still do a search incident to arrest, but you can't just conduct a search of the interior of a vehicle anymore just because you made an arrest out of it.
So yeah, now they changed the wording in the TCA, TCA Tennessee Code Annotated, which is basically the laws of the state of Tennessee. What they did was they changed the wording in that that says that you can only search where that person would reasonably have access to. So
That's still the interior, right?
it would still be most of the interior.
Mm-hmm.
Even in your case where, if they had stuffed it underneath the passenger seat, that would still fit the definition.
Yeah, we'll add that to that, stops, pursuits, and searches.
So
We'll make that,
So it depends on how
Basically.
long their arms are.
I was thinking the
How much
same way, because if
See?
you're
Well,
reaching
hey, I
in the
wouldn't know
back,
anything.
I mean, if they,
yeah,
So-
you're like, what, 3 inches taller than I am, so,
I
we
mean,
could-
I
we
would
could
be able
argue-
to reach the back seat.
We could
yeah,
probably
depending on the
argue,
car and depending
Yeah.
on the person, but yeah, for the most part, it's the entire.
I mean, but they could throw it back there too. That's not fair.
so Maddie,
Yes.
don't ever throw contraband. Don't ever drive a Prius. There's some small car first.
And throw contraband in
And
the
don't
back
throw
seat.
because with you driving a small car, we could search everywhere.
Okay, I got you.
We could get the trunk.
I know.
We could trump you.
But But, I mean, Jackie has a point. If they got long arms, you should be able to search the whole vehicle.
Yeah, so we'll, I'd like to kind of go over last week's stats before we wrap it up. We're coming up on about 15 minutes.
Yeah, you got 10 minutes.
But we really do. We need to do a whole show talking about stops and pursuits and searches. Because there may have been some case law change in the past. I don't stop a lot of cars anymore. Now that I'm sheriff, I don't search as many as I used to. So there may be even some case laws that's happened in the past few years that I hadn't heard about.
Yeah.
So last week, I told you I was gonna start getting this report by the week now, instead of by a month. We'll still do a monthly closeout or something on here, but guess how many calls we responded to just from the 8th to today?
I'm gonna say it's over 100.
100 what?
105.
115.
It's just like the Price is Right. I'll go
Yes.
116.
Winner.
Are you
Smart
serious?
move. Smart move. 262.
Holy moly.
I told you we were crazy busy this weekend. Crazy busy. It wasn't a full moon, was
From
it?
the 8th until today?
Yep.
It's 8 days. That is insane.
We weren't, it wasn't a full moon. I don't know. I can remember, I had the radio on. I don't have my radio on all the time when I'm off and on the weekends. But every now and then I'll keep it up where I can hear it. And then if I hear like a hot call or something, a pursuit, I can turn it up for
It's
the most part.
27 calls a day.
Yeah, that's about right. That's where we were at last time. 32 traffic stops. Alarms, we had 5, 6, 10. We had 10 alarm calls. A couple of break-ins. Domestic, 11 domestics over 8 days. I'm telling you guys, I can remember a domestic a week, maybe a couple a week. And now we're at 11 in 8 days.
So even when I first started, and I've only been doing this full time for 3.5 years. So just when I started doing this full time, I think I only averaged maybe once a week.
Mm-hmm. 34 reports we're taking. That's something we're going to start adding to it. We can get that information from our software system. And so out of those 262 calls, 34 reports were generated. And that's most likely going to be, well, I mean, you can't really go down through here and pick and choose which ones you would think generated a report. But we had 10 thefts in 8 days that were reported, 11 frauds, and frauds is pretty bad. I mean, it's pretty wide. I mean, that's when an example of a common fraud call. Somebody will call dispatch and they'll say that they either got an email, a text message, a phone call, or a letter in the mail where they're wanting money for something, and they'll call dispatch. And most likely how that's going to be handled is dispatch is going to get your information and they're going to get a callback number, and they're going to call one of the deputies, one of the patrol deputies, and give them that number, and they're going to call them on the cell phone, and they're going to ask them the information. And if they've God forbid sent money to one of these scammers, then that's almost always going to generate a report. That
And
way,
another public service announcement, since all 45,000 citizens are listening. If somebody asks you to pay in any type of a gift card, Bitcoin, gift card, it's probably a scam.
probably, most likely.
99.99999%.
I'll take Lawson's gift cards. Give a little free shout out to
Bass
Lawson.
Pro Shop, Lawson's, and KFC.
I'd like to thank the sponsors of this program. Oh, we don't have any.
Yeah, we had 10 thefts, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wrecks over that 8-day period. A whole bunch of suspicious activity that warranted a deputy in the area. And there was another one here that I had highlighted that I was going to.
Is it on the back? I see a highlight on the back.
Is it animals?
No, we had a couple of overdoses. We had one, did you hear the call go out? I think it was Sunday night in Etheridge. I believe it was Cherry Street. Have we heard anything about that?
I was thinking Etheridge worked that. I know we responded. I was thinking Etheridge took that.
Mm-hmm. That was the only overdose that I heard go out, but there was suicide attempts was the one that I was looking for.
There was one yesterday.
Three suicide attempts over 8 days. That's another one. We talked about that last time. That's the one number I think has probably tripled over the past 10, 15 years. Suicide attempts. Well, that's gonna wrap us up, ain't it? Technical advisor, Maddie.
I guess so. You've still got 4 minutes though.
4
You ready
minutes.
to be?
What do you wanna do for 4 minutes?
Well, let's talk a little bit.
Patrick's trash can. You
Make
can
fun
get a
of my
golf
trash.
bag for a trash can.
Really?
It's cool. It's not a full size one. It's meant to be a trash can. It's
Nothing
just,
cool about a trash can that's a golf bag.
it's awesome. Hey,
I think for one show, y'all should do funny police stories.
Well,
I mean, even if you brought like 4 or 5 people in here where you just told your favorite story that you ever worked, that would be interesting.
it's a good idea, Maddie. That's why you're our technical advisor.
and producer.
No, I don't produce. I just let it go the way it is.
Story time.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't going to be edited.
Mm-mm.
No.
Well, when you come in here on Thursdays, you're going to be doing it live. So why would I edit it
Do a
if y'all
tape.
are pre-recorded?
Doesn't the FCC, don't they
You didn't
mandate
say any bad
don't they,
words the
don't they
entire time
mandate
you were in
a
here.
delay?
No. Well, when it streams from here to YouTube and stuff, it does delay.
We'll yeah. So we'll have the headphones on and talking in the mics. So we'll look a little bit more.
A little bit more Howard Sternish.
We'll look like we know what we're doing, whether we do or not. We'll get there. We'll get a little bit more polished. We'll get to where this is just runs like butter.
Well, hey, while we've got a few minutes, let's talk about promotion of the Sheriff's Department. We're talking about training. There's some specialized fields that you can get in. It's not just patrol. So you can come work in patrol and work things like interdiction, human trafficking, DUI. You can move into investigations with advanced training in cyber, criminal, financial, death, narcotics, SVU, Special Victims Unit. Special unit of SWAT, gang, SROs. SROs have to go through special training. Drone technologies, mental health, domestic violence, K9, and Sheriff brought it up, FTO, the field training officer. Those guys are instrumental in making sure that we've got good deputies as they're coming out of basic training and make sure that they have the right attitude and the right fortitude to go forward and do the job. So.
And we need to remind listeners, Citizens Academy starts tonight, 6 p.m. I'll be there to meet and greet the people coming in for the Citizens Academy. Also, we have our golf scramble, June 10th, 1 p.m. If you hadn't already got your foursome lined up, give us a call. We'll write you down. June 10th, that's supporting the reserve program at the Sheriff's Department.
And you too could win a golf bag trash can.
Jackie's going for it.
If I win it, somebody can have it.
We also have a wild game dinner, August 12th. This is going to be the first one ever. We're already selling tickets for it. Wild game dinner at the First Baptist Church on Springer, August 12th. That's going to support the Lawrence County Reserve Program also. So we've got those two things Citizens Academy starts tonight, and that's really it. That's all we got lined up right now. So get your golf team ready and get a table bought for the Wild Game Day. And that's gonna wrap us up. Guys, thanks for coming. Maddie, as always, thanks for
No problem.
advising us technically.
All right,
And we
we're
will
signing off.
see y'all next week.